Daliście 74 cm.
Ja byłem w
4
miesiące temu. Pamiętasz co? Powiedzieli, że nie mam nic, potem były. A to była wystawa tylko później.
Możecie się tam przesunąć, żebym ja się usiadł na brzegu?
Nie, ja muszę na brzegu, bo ja zdjęcie.
Musisz tak.
Ja zdjęcie. Ja nic nie widzę.
Ja dzisiaj się nachodziłem, chyba pół godziny.
Nie chcesz iść do przodu?
A może chodźcie tam. Wiesz, ja lubię tak też taki, żeby wyjść po prostu i tam stanąć się przed ścianą. Także ja nie lubię tak w środku gdzieś tam, wiesz, tylko ewentualnie tam później, wiesz.
Ja myślałam, że będą miejsce z
No, pospacerować sobie tak.
Ostatnio bardzo widziałam. Ale nie wiadomo, czy nie włączę.
No, może być.
Włodek przyjdzie, to włączy, jak zwykle. Nie pozwolę.
Tu ktoś siedzi.
Tak, i pan.
Bardzo z grubsza pokazuje. Co grubsza. Jak przeczytam pierwsze nazwisko.
Jest co, usiądę tam, wiesz. To jak będę chodził, to najwyżej wam będę przeszkadzał.
Co ty, czy bez aparatu?
Proszę?
Myślę, że jest twoja kamera.
No, jeśli chodzi o aparat, to mam.
Nie, kamerę. Wcześniej miałem się zacząć. Dopiero drzwi otwierałem. Czekają na ciebie. Już?
15.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask you to take your seats now? Good evening once again, and welcome to the Consulate General of the Republic of Poland in New York City for an event named Passports for Life, the Bernese group and the rescue of Jews in World War II. But first of all, I would like to introduce Consul General of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Maciej Golgiewski.
Welcome what was happening during the Second World War with regards to various individuals who were trying to ensure that not all the Jews were exterminated in Europe. And we all know about the work of Yad Vashem, we all know about the work of also many historians and others who document those heroes and people who were trying to help and do their best in the face of this calamity. But there's just an exciting story to be told about a very specific effort that was happening in Switzerland, of all places. The story, and I will not get into this story because we have people who will do it much better than me, and I will learn from them tonight. There's a story of Polish diplomats, and I have to say that I myself, and I will soon introduce my guests, I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants in a sense, because people who were here in this building before me, who were Consul General, like Consul General Sylvie Strakac, were very much involved, often against the mainstream current of political and popular opinion, in trying to spread the word about what was happening to the Jews during the Second World War, about the extermination of the Jews, about shipments of Jews to Auschwitz, trying to convince powers that be at the time, President Roosevelt and others, to bomb rail tracks that were responsible through which there were Jews being transported to Auschwitz. For example, in 1944, my predecessor, Sylvia Strakac, received a cable that was again cable message that, listen, every day 10,000 to 15,000 Jews are being transported through that railroad station in Košice in Slovakia to Auschwitz, and please do everything you can. Talk to Agudat Israel, talk to everyone. We need to influence everyone, the people who have power among the Allies, influence Allied friends to bomb that right track and do something about it. Nothing happened. Right. So the fact, and the ambassador and everybody else, I guess, will talk about this, that what Sylvia Strakac was trying to do has very much to do with what was happening in Switzerland at the time. So I would like to welcome you again. We have three exciting speakers, and we're telling a story that the Jews have been discovering about their parents, their grandparents, those who were rescued. This is a Jewish story, and we're just observers as Polish diplomats, as historians, as civil servants, because they come to us with those stories. And they tell us, and Ambassador Kumov, who's here with us, will tell you how it all happened to him. We are witnessing personal stories of those whose families have been rescued by various people, among them Polish diplomats that you will hear about this evening. So today we'll have three speakers. I'm very glad they're here with us. We have Jeffrey Tindler, who's our friend here in New York City, whom I'm sure some of you know him. He's a child and grandchild of Holocaust survivors. He's also a genealogist. He creates genealogy of his ancestors. He's from Bernese in Poland, and he's really tracking the family history and the history of that area, organizing trips. He knows more about geography of Poland than I do, and he really is quite a fixture in our community of Polish Americans. I remember you considered some of the Polish American was asked in the group of Jews, who of you considers as Polish Americans? You raise your hand. You have very, very long Polish lineage. We also have with us Ms. Heidi Fishman, who was a graduate of Williams College. She's in Vermont, and she's also a daughter of Holocaust survivors, and she is very intimately linked to the story that's about to be told this evening. And I'm very glad that I met her today for the first time. She wrote a book called Tuti's Promise, and she won an award for it, the 2015 Joseph Zola Memorial Holocaust Educator Award from the Morris Greenberg Center for Judaic Studies at the University of Hartford. She goes around, speaks to community groups, the Holocaust education centers about the story of her family. Just heard a little bit of it just before we came here, downstairs here, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it just so happened that I'm very glad to have my colleague from the Diplomatic Service, Ambassador Jakub Kumok. Welcome. I'm very happy that you're here with us. who is, apart from being a diplomat and serving as ambassador of the Republic of Poland in Bern in Switzerland, he's also a social scientist. He holds a PhD in social studies and political science from the Jagiellonian University. And when he told me first that he's coming, that we met just a few days ago for the first time, and he went to Switzerland and suddenly he discovered people coming to him with stories. And he was unaware of that before. And he's, again, a messenger, but he's not doing it himself. It's the ones who come to him, the Jews with personal stories in Switzerland. He's becoming, in a sense, a conduit of their stories, and he's doing a lot of great work right now that's cutting edge, and you'll hear a lot about it, because what we're witnessing this evening is history making. I mean, a lot of the findings you will hear about, a lot of the stories are groundbreaking, are new, while the story has been kind of heard of in the past, the extent of it, and also the context, the political context behind those stories of survival and rescue have not been made public and have not really been written about much. So it's pretty groundbreaking, and I hope you will enjoy the evening. But I would first like to ask the ones who actually tell the stories, our friends here. Maybe I'll start with Jeffrey, and then Jeffrey will speak, and then after Jeffrey, we'll ask Heidi to tell her story, and then the ambassador will round it up and talk a little bit about his own work in Switzerland around those stories, because it's the stories and memories that really carry the witness of the Holocaust into today as well. So welcome again, have a good evening, thank you for coming.
Thank you all for coming. As the Consul General indicated, I've been working in research in my family history since 1983. And what turned into just simply being my personal family history has turned into anything relating to the particular towns that my family comes from, and in particular, Bernese, Poland, which is in southwestern Poland. Oops, I've got to take my other thing out. There we go. I'll just Bernese is in southwestern Poland. At the time of the outbreak of World War II, it had a population of over 27,000 Jews. And it was simply, I was just there last week, it's about an hour drive to Auschwitz, where you see down on the left. When I went to Yad Vashem 30 years ago, and I was researching my family tree and researching anything about Benjamin, I came across files of passports. This is a sample passport. The passports were in the archives of Abraham Zilberstein at Yad Vashem. This is a Paraguayan passport that was issued in Bern, Switzerland. It's all in French. This one is for Moses Manela and his wife and the children, and you see their pictures, and it's dated December 1942. I found literally hundreds of such passports, and what did I do? I copied them. Every passport that was my family's towns. I recall there were passports from Holland, there were passports, I think, from Warsaw, but at the time it did not interest me because I really didn't know what this was all about, but it had to do with Benjamin, so I copied passports. Here's a passport. It's difficult for people to see, but my friend Dasha is in the audience. It's for Joseph Inkster. That's your Inkster. That's your family, right? Inkster. Inkster, yeah. Again, from Benji. This is, in the files, I also saw pictures in envelopes, or some just photocopies, actually like microfilms of passports. And this particular picture interested me a lot because it had the name Agafliegel, Mariam Agafliegel. And I'm related to every Agafliegel, and through a piece of magic, so to speak, the lady sitting up front in purple, that's her daughter. So this passport was supposed to be issued for my cousin over here. We just met, by the way, a couple of months ago. As I said, all these passports were in the archival records of Dr. Abraham Zilberstein at Yad Vashem. In addition to hundreds of such passports, which, by the way, I kept in a loose leaf on my bookcase for over 30 years until I met Jakob, which we'll get into. In the archives was a journal, and this is a sample page of the journal. Names and notes that I was able to figure out. This, for example, is Barak Hirsch, ISR, meaning Israel, which the Germans like to have a male, Rosemary. By the way, I met Mr. Rosemary's granddaughter. She's 92 years old and she lives in my neighborhood recently. It says, in Frau, the wife and 9 children, Sosnowiec, Kleinstrodel 8, which is the address in the ghetto that they were living. And then it says brief, a letter, May 31, M. Mit photo. Meaning, as I've learned, that what was happening, and I read this from some articles, is that these passports, which I believed at the time were legitimate, were being issued in Switzerland by what I thought was the Paraguayan government. And in order for the passports to be issued, photos had to be sent through the mail to Switzerland. This is another page. Later on, the page of the journal gets typed up, and there are actually 1,509 entries in the journal for passports that were being issued through Alfred Straussbaum. Now, here's a sample. These envelopes, there are thousands of such envelopes, because Straussbaum was a Jewish man from Belgium who in April of 1940 was able to get a passport to get him to Switzerland, a temporary passport. And when he got to Switzerland, he set up shop in Lausanne, and he was working with Abraham Zilberstein of Relico, R-E-L-I-C-O, which was an arm of the World Jewish Congress. And what he was doing in 1940, 41, 42 was sending care packages, sardines, food, and the Jewish people in Belgium were sending him letters. At first, the letters were being sent in Polish, and then the Germans required the letters to be sent in German so that the censors could read what was being written. And what happened is, this is, by the way, Alfred Straussbaum. The letters were being written in code language. So people would write that everything is fine, we're working, but we expect maybe next week Uncle Garish will come, meaning Uncle Expulsion. The Germans didn't understand that word. Or they would say, it's possible that Uncle Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, will be coming next week. They use code language. Now, this is Leon and Ruchla Semler and their children Yoel, Wolf, and Dora. This was my great uncle and his wife and 2 children, my grandfather's brother. In Masua, which is another Holocaust center in Israel, which is not Yad Vashem, and what they have, Yad Vashem does not have, and it's vice versa. I found the archives of Alfred Straussbaum. And I found this letter. I found hundreds of letters, in fact. And I copied about 200 pages of letters. most of them in Polish or in German. Those letters which were from Warsaw or someplace else, not Benjamin Sosnowiec, at the time I did not copy. But when I saw this letter, I lost a heartbeat, because I saw the signature Leib Yisrael symbol. Bensburg, which is what the Germans renamed Benjamin, and Robert Kochstrasse, which was the address in the ghetto. And the letter is dated January 29th, 1943. From my knowledge of Yiddish, I could read the German. Mein lieber Alf, he writes to my dear Alf. He's thanking him for a previous package that was sent, and is sending him his best. And then he asks, was hat man bei Frau und sein Kinder, how was your wife and the children? And then he writes, to remember me, he's sending unsere Bilder, our pictures, and he's wishing him all the best. So this is the letter, January 43, that my great uncle wrote to Schwarzbaum to get these passports. Then, oops. Okay. I'll tell you something. Sure. What I do. Yes, well, we'll go next. Is that okay? Yeah, that's it. Okay, thank you. So then, I found this letter, and this letter is dated March 23rd, 1943, Bensburg, Leib Simler, and as opposed to the first letter, where my granduncle was writing casually, don't forget, the Germans were censoring the mail. In fact, this line means it was censored, because they were looking for, what do you call it, hidden text in a letter, invisible ink, So the Germans would put this special liquid on it to see if there's any invisible ink. The first letter, my uncle writes, Dear Alf, everything's fine, very casual letter. This letter he writes, Lieber Herr Schwarzbaum, Dear Dr. Schwarzbaum. And he writes, I'm writing to you in connection with my January 30th letter, and he's very concerned, my uncle says, that he has not heard back in connection with the letter. And he says, I had sent you my builder, my pictures. And then he writes, and you can see underscored, Schnell Antwort, respond quickly. March 23rd, 1943. My great uncle is realizing that the noose is getting tighter around their necks in the Benji ghetto. In fact, August 1st, 1943, the ghetto was liquidated. That's the signature L symbol. That was March of 43. Again, my research. This is now June of 43, and this is a list that was prepared by the Judenrat, by the Jewish Council for the Germans. It's a list of about 60-odd people who were shot while trying to escape a deportation. And down here is Rochla Simler. That is my great uncle's wife. When I found all this material and realized that all these passports for Benjamin are being issued in 1943, at first I thought, well, the problem is the timing, because the ghetto was liquidated in August of 43. But subsequently I found some Jewish people did survive from the Benjamin ghetto. In fact, this past year I ran a tour to Poland, and there was a man who came from Detroit, and I met him, and I said to him, where are you from? He says, from Benjamin. And I said, okay, when were you born? And he said, 1937. I said, how did you survive? And he looked up to me, and I still remember, and he said, my aunt and I got a passport to Paraguay. This man who lives in Detroit is the nephew of Alfred Schwarzbaum. So living proof that Jews from Benjamin did get out. In fact, what the Manila, the first passport I showed you, Abraham Manila wrote a book in Israel about how he was survived through these passports. Now, timing was crucial. The ghetto was being liquidated. And the key, this is a very key letter. This letter is dated June 2nd, 1943. I'll go back to this. This is dated June 22nd, 1943. So about 20 days before my great aunt was shot trying to escape the liquidation, Munyak Meron, the head of the Jewish Judenrat, the Jewish Council, wrote a letter to Alfred Schwarzbaum. And this letter says, I am writing to ask you please stop all correspondence and communications with the Jews in the ghetto. So the head of the Judenrat was telling Switzerland, telling Alfred Schwarzbaum, a Belgian refugee, stop. I stand here and I say, j'accuse. This is Abraham Manila. This is the book he published in Israel, translated, it's On the Way to the Rising Moon. He survived, other members of his family survived. Here is his passport, Paraguayan passport, from his book. And I mentioned before, Rosemary, this is the lady who lives in my neighborhood. I met her a couple months ago, and I've been interviewing her. When I came into her house, my eyes just, her whole apartment has pictures of the family, and the first thing that hit my eyes was this. She had on her wall a passport. The passport is that for her grandparents and her father's siblings. There are 6 photographs here. Of the 6, 4 people survived. And in fact, today, as I was going through my correspondence, like the letters that I found for my great-uncle, I actually found a letter that her grandfather wrote to Schwarzbaum in Switzerland. Thank you. And by the way, that is all that I ever knew, I have to say, about the passports until Facebook. And somebody posted something on Facebook a year ago, and in Polish, about some commemoration, and I saw the name Zilberstein, and I knew the name Zilberstein. So I wrote an email to the person who posted it, his name is Marcus Bleshner. He is the honorary Polish consul in Zurich, Switzerland. And I said, I saw Zilberstein, is there something, whatever? And we started a communication, and lo and behold, I learned about Jakob Kumach, the ambassador to Switzerland, and what they have been doing. And since then, for the past year, we have been working together, exchanging information, things that I had, they didn't have, but mostly they had more than I did. And it's been an amazing cooperation, almost on a daily basis. We're communicating with information, and more importantly, as I'm sure Jakob will tell you, finding the people who survived, because the important thing is, Heidi's going to say, sure, Heidi's mother survived with the passport, but had no idea how they got the passports. Manila and the people who got the passports had no idea how they got the passports. What was actually happening in Switzerland? Heidi?
All right, let me introduce my family to you. We've got my grandparents, Heinz and Barbara Lichtenstern, my grandfather's brother, Leopold Lichtenstern. I think that might be an engagement party, that picture. Then we have my grandparents' wedding here. Sometimes this works, I forget. My grandparents' wedding, and my mother, and my Uncle Robbie. My mother was born in Cologne, Germany, and in 1935 and in 1936. 1936, they decided to move to Amsterdam. Of course, Amsterdam would be a safe place. It was neutral. World War I left the Netherlands alone. It would be fine. Well, we all know how that ended. That was not fine. I'm going to stand up. I can talk better than standing. The story is very complicated. I'm going to fast forward to 1944. My grandfather was able to keep the family out of the concentration camps because he was a metals commodities dealer. And because of that, the Nazis felt he was useful. He was helping find metal, make trades, and all right, we'll stay out of the camps. But in 1944, he ended up in Westerbork. This is a really famous picture of Westerbork. This is the Boulevard of Miseries. That's what it's called. Every Dutch child knows this very quickly. I think this is like a middle school picture you learn in history. And there's metal in the foreground. The reason why the metal is important is because my grandfather helped turn the transit camp into a work camp. So they were trying to keep as many Jews in Holland as possible, and that way they weren't being sent east to the extermination camps. In February, that's where the family ended up. The reason they ended up there is because Adolf Eichmann and Albert Speer were having an argument. Albert Speer was in charge of munitions and armaments. He needed metal, and he wanted the people they called the metal Jews to stay in Holland. They were supposed to help get the metal. Eichmann wanted Holland to be Judenfrei, Jew-free. I found these, they were telegrams, letters, going back and forth between their two offices. And in yellow, this is my grandfather's name on every one of them. And it was a discussion, what do we do with the metal Jews? All right, so Spear saying keep them in Holland. Eichmann saying no, we're clearing Holland out. In the end, Eichmann won, which is why my grandfather was in Westerbork. This is in Hebrew here. You can see it says Israel Police. This is in Hebrew. It was used in Eichmann's trial as evidence against him. Even though another high-ranking Nazi said keep these men alive, Eichmann was saying no. In September 1944, my family was sent to Theresienstadt. This is the transport list. My mother, my uncle, my grandparents are on the list here, and they're being sent to Theresienstadt. This was Eichmann's compromise, because my grandfather had been a metal Jew. Theresienstadt was a camp that was considered privileged. It was where they brought the Red Cross to go see, you see, we're not doing such bad things, come take a look around, everybody's happy. The Nazis made a propaganda movie. They called it Hitler Gives the Jews a Town, and everybody who was in that movie soon after was sent to Auschwitz and killed. And while they were making the movie, they had the guards with the machine guns just offset to, you know, smile now or get shot. This is pictures from Theresienstadt when I went to go do some research. This is the statistics here of who made it. Privileged meant you had a 12% chance of living. So, I don't know what the Auschwitz numbers are, but 12% isn't very good. This is me on the corner in Theresienstadt, in one of the town corners. This is what the town looks like now. It's a town where people live. It's not a place where people really commemorate what happened back then. There's a hotel in what was the Gestapo headquarters, and there's people living in what used to be the barracks where people were dying. And this is a model of the town. A month after the family arrived in Theresienstadt, this order came out. And basically what it says is that we're going to send 2,500 men between the ages of 16 and 55 to the east to build a work camp. Everybody knew what a work camp was. That meant death. Nobody came back from work camps. And this is the statistics of 18,000 people were sent over the next month east. My grandfather was in this group. He was in this age group. He knew he was going to have to go. And he said goodbye to my mom. She tells the story that she was lying on a bunk. He came in, he threw himself on her and cried. She'd never seen him cry before, and said goodbye. They're sending me away. I don't think I'll ever see you again. He had a passport.
It's the same.
It's the same passport. Paraguay, my mother, my uncle, my grandfather, my grandmother, he had this passport. With this passport, he had a letter of notarization. He didn't have the actual passport, he had a copy of the passport. And this letter, which says the passport is a true copy and the notary stamped it and attested to that. I found the son of this notary, talked to him this October in Tel Aviv. It was very exciting to be able to connect more dots in the story. And he showed the passport copy and the notarization to somebody at the transport. And he was given this piece of paper. It says, ausgeschieden, which means withdrawn. And he was allowed to go back into the camp. And he was not sent to Auschwitz. So we showed the passport at the transport. He's given this little slip of paper. My grandmother kept this her whole life. I have a piece of paper in my house. And he was left alone. That transport was supposed to have 2,500 people on it. It actually had 2,499. I don't know if that last number was my grandfather or somebody else, but it was missing one person. The family was able to stay in Theresienstadt until liberation, and there's a picture of liberation. It was actually on my uncle's 7th birthday. It was literally on his birthday. After the war, people were all trying to get home, wherever home was. My family was trying to go back to Amsterdam. The Dutch did not want stateless Jews in the Netherlands. They had enough problems. They didn't need any refugees. They were in a DP camp, the Allied Expeditionary Forces Displaced Persons. That's what FDP is. They were in the camp for a little while. And you can see that this is my mother, no, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother's. I don't know what happened to my uncle's card. Maybe my cousins have it, I'm not sure. It said stateless, it's crossed off, it says Paraguay. I believe that because they were considered Paraguayan, they were allowed back to Amsterdam. Otherwise they would have been stateless and they would have been stuck in the DP camp for much longer. This is the copy of the passport. My grandfather traveled on that passport for several years after the war. He had to make a living, he was an international businessman, he had to go around the world, and he traveled on the Paraguayan passport. I'm not sure if he ever went to Paraguay. There are some stamps from Paraguay on it, but he never went to live there. He ended up settling in Switzerland, which is also just makes this whole story come around. I never knew where the passport came from. I just accepted the story from my mom. We had a Paraguayan passport. Where did it come from? Why didn't I ask? No, I didn't ask any questions till after my grandparents had passed away, unfortunately. When I started writing the book, Tony's Promise, I started asking, I started looking in archives, I kept looking at Paraguayan passport, and every time I found an archive that had a picture of a passport, they all looked the same, and they all had the same handwriting. And then, a year ago, November, I saw an article about Julius Kuhl, who Kumash will tell you more about, and there was a picture of a passport, and I said, that looks just like my grandfather's passport. So I'm going to let you talk more about the passports.
Well, it's very difficult to talk after such a powerful testimony. And I apologize for my professional handling the microphone. I'm never good at it. And I apologize for not being a native speaker. I'm the only non-native speaker. Three of us, and for our own colleagues to support me if I say something stupid. But before I say something stupid, I would say that it was, for me, it was a Also a story I never heard about before. Although I was born in what was, until 1943, Warsaw Ghetto, 500 meters from the place where Mordechai Yankelevich and his brave fighters took their lives rather than surrender to the Germans. When I became ambassador in Switzerland in 2016, well, we had a honorary consul, Mr. Marcus Blackman, who is Jewish and whose father was a Holocaust survivor. Marcus came to me and said, why don't you do anything about your predecessor, Alexander Walisz? And I said, well, I haven't hardly heard about my predecessors, and I didn't know who Alexander Walisz really was. So he said, how is it that you don't know about a man who produced the passports? He said, what passports? Yes, I have heard about the Latin American passports, but unfortunately not in a context we are speaking about them tonight. This is a poem written in Warsaw Ghetto, probably 1943. Chciałbym mieć paszport Urugwaju. Ach, jaki to jest piękny kraj, ach, jak przyjemnie być poddanym kraju, co zwie się Urugwaj. And so on. I'd like to have Paraguayan passport of golden freedoms that land. Oh, how nice it must feel to be the subject of land called Paraguay. The author did not survive. He was killed during the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. And I believe this poem, which sounds like rather like a dream than real possibility of rescue, survival, that it meant that the passports were kind of myth rather than reality. That's why I was afraid of this story. Because we also know and told them that the Nazis organized provocations. They announced, for example, in 1943 that they had Latin American passports to sell, and many people were lured out of their hidings and killed. So I believe that so-called Paraguayan and Latin American passports was rather a Nazi trap than the reality. I didn't like this story. I didn't want this story. It took me several months before I met an Orthodox Jew, a religious person, a religious man, who is linked to his family to Agudat Israel. I invited him to the celebration of the Constitution Day on the 3rd of May. And I saw a person nearly crying, saying, this place, this embassy is a holy place to us. I mean, it's unusual when somebody calls your embassy a holy place. I would say a very unholy place. But then I realized that it is important for part of the Jewish community in Switzerland. I didn't understand what really happened in the Polish legation. And we started first Googling, and then searching through the database of documents in many places in the world, including in Russia. First we found something like this. This is a portrait. This is a portrait of a picture of Julius Kuhn, who was at that time 29-year-old. He was an employee of the Polish legation, a Jew. He came from a Hasidic family in Sanok, southern Poland, not a Hasidic himself. And we found that this young man was interrogated in January 1943 by the Swiss police. And he said following words: the passport law would on each occasion be collected from Honorary Consul of Paraguay, Mr. Hübner, Rudolf Hübner, a Swiss, who had nothing to do with Paraguay as a country. And then they were filled out by Polish Consul Konstanty Rokicki and subsequently returned to Consul Hübner for signature. So there is a trace of a Polish diplomat fabricating Latin American passports, Paraguayan ones. Then we found a testimony of Abraham Zilberstein, a great Jewish hero, representative of the war Jewish converts, and founder of the Radical Rescue Committee. In French, he said that it's two Polish diplomats who persuaded him to start doing it and to start creating the list of people for whom to fabricate a passport. It also seemed like something very new to us. It's not something that we learn when I did at history lessons at school. And in fact, as Heidi has already said, all the passports look alike. They were fabricated by the same person. There's no doubt about it. We were trying to find out whether it's true that a consul called Konstantin Rokicki we have never before heard about. How is it possible that, that so many passports appear, one person stands behind them, and we have never heard about the person? How is it possible? The same handwriting, same person, same day, same date, same day. We have found several passports, and well, let's say received them back from a family in Israel. They also look the same. These are original passports which are now in, well, let's say, property of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. This is the whole archive an Orthodox family in Israel had. And probably this was the crucial moment, because in Yad Vashem, as I think you mentioned, the Yad Vashem file, the Zilberstein file, there is a vast correspondence between Zilberstein and Rokicki. An author was found. As you can see, list number 1503. Handwritten list by somebody, but when you compare, one of my diplomats had a brilliant idea to compare the numbers. Basically, people, people when they handwrite, they almost always write numbers the same way. It's very difficult to get rid of the way you write numbers. Look at 1503 and look at the passport 535. 5 and 3. And when you compare any number in this list with the number on the Paraguayan passport, you will see that the person who is the author of this note is the one who has forged all Paraguayan passports. But we didn't know who the author was. The list doesn't leave any signature, nothing. But it contains two words, pana doctora, which literally means of Mr. Doctor. Mr. Doctor was how Poles referred to Abraham Zilberstein. Somebody who wrote these words here also offered another piece of paper, because it's exactly, pana doctora is exactly written the same way. Look at D, for example. There's no doubt. This person left a signature here, and the same signature was found here. The head of consular department, whose name was at that time Konstantin Rokicki. So it confirmed the Swiss theory that Konstantin Rokicki authored the Paraguayan passports. Our doubts were completely everywhere off when an Israeli person showed us her passport, her Polish passport, issued in Bern in 1941. This is the Polish passport, and look how it looks like. And this is a comparison of the Polish passport and the so-called Paraguayan passport. It's the same. It looks exactly like your grandfather's one, and exactly like Belgian passport you've shown us. Yad Vashem archives contain also vast correspondence between Zilberstein and Rokicki. This is, for example, the whole process of production of two passports for Ursula Borchardt and her son, her little son, who was at that time 2, right? And for her father, Georg Hermann Borchardt, who at the beginning of the 20th century was one of the most well-known German writers. Unfortunately, he did not survive. You can say that in October, the passport, and there's a first correspondence, the passport is being how we call it, Rokicki for the first time is being contacted by Zilberstein. At the end, after a month, the passport is produced. Letter. Zapraszam to Rokicki. Please, I close for please prepare passports for these people. These people I enclose the specific notes. Borchardt, Georg Hermann, Borchardt, Ursula. His personal data, Ursula's personal data, and the passport. Borchardt, confirmation of his Paraguayan citizenship, the passport for Ursula Borchardt. Georg Hermann Borchardt did not make it. Unfortunately, he was deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau in 1943, but his daughter and his little grandson survived. I met Henry Peter, Michael Kalman, whose name today is Menachem Ben-Dror. He is a kibbutznik and he lives in Israel. And this is, for example, another passport in possession of an Israeli family who also saved life of an entire family from Holland. This is a Dutch Jewish family, not a German. We didn't know who financed the passport. So at the beginning, we presumed it was Jewish organizations. We cooperated with two. With World Jewish Congress, they mostly worked with rescuing secular Jews, and with Agudat Israel. Agudas was mostly working on saving, rescuing rabbinic dynasties and religious Jewish people from other ghettos in German-occupied Poland. But this is a particular passport, and it really has a meaning for us. As you can see, there it is forwarded by Tadeusz Roger. Tadeusz Roger at that time was the foreign minister of Poland. So we cannot speak here about an individual action or about, let's say, an action by a few righteous individuals. We are speaking about a state-organized forgery. This is Konstanty Rokicki, probably his only picture. We didn't know much about him. He was a second lieutenant of the Polish army, born 1899, fought 1920 in the Polish Bolshevik War, and was decorated for bravery. Later on, he joined the consular service, served in Latvia, Belarus, Cairo, and twice in Berlin. According to our knowledge, during his second stay in Bern, he fabricated a total of 1,056 Paraguayan passports for at least 2,200 people. This is one of his IDs shortly from before the war. The question is, and at the very beginning, I asked myself this question: what about the government in exile? As you know, Poland had a government in exile in London, which represented the country, which kept fighting, and of course, which was responsible also for any operation like this. At the very beginning, I believe that Polish diplomats did not inform the government about what they were doing. And the reason is very simple. It's not anti-Semitism, it's not like fear of how the government would react. The problem was that they were not sure whether their cables are safe. And there is no diplomat who would say publicly, yes, I'm the forger, I'm forging documents, this is what I do. So of course, forgery is not something we may speak about. Rokicki did not work alone. We found a document when my predecessor, Ambassador Alexander Wadish, who was his superior, finally intervenes with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland and argues that You know, there's no forgery here. It's between Poland and Paraguay. It's not your thing. You shouldn't meddle. You Swedes should stay apart. Besides, we're not smuggling anything because all the passports are copies, exactly. So there are no original passports who cross the border. Why no original passports? Because the policy was not to make people leave the Nazi-occupied countries. If they did so, if they had done so, it would have produced a disaster. The first country, like Spain or Switzerland or Sweden, would have been alarmed that there is an influx of Paraguayans. The Germans would have been alerted. So the policy was very simple. Let these people be interned as foreigners and let them wait till they are liberated. Or, if the war lasts too long, let's bribe the Germans or exchange the people against the Germans who are in hands of the Allies. There was a myth that there are thousands of Germans in the hands of the Americans, of South Africans, of Latin Americans, German citizens. And Germans initially believed in it. In May 1943, however, my government learned somehow about the passports. And they cabled the Bernese legation, saying, this is something we're really very proud about it. The fourth paragraph says that purely humanitarian reasons dictate us to go here as far as we can. So it meant that Ambassador Wadasz and his diplomats could still forge passports. To us, there is a list of 62 people for whom to make passports to. Of course, this is not a story about brave Polish diplomats. I will always tell it. This is not a story about brave Polish diplomats who saved Jews. This is also a story about Jews who saved other Jews. The diplomats would never fabricate passports if they had not known the addresses, the names of the recipients. Is there anybody who can know 5,000 people? Of course not. You need intermediaries to do it. This was one of them, a huge hero and a forgotten hero, Chaim Israel Ice. Born in 1876, he was Czech in Poland. One of the founders of Agudat Israel. He himself provided the legation of Poland with several hundreds of names and addresses. He probably also co-sponsored the whole rescue operation. Because, well, there's no secret that the Paraguayan honorary consul, who was a Swiss businessman and lawyer, did not work for free. He sold his passport for 500 francs a piece. So huge money, a monthly salary of a doctor. Julius Kuhl, the person which I showed you in the first picture, made 350 francs a month. So, and it was a typical price of a passport. All other consuls who also sold passports took between 600 and 700. And some intermediaries even tried to obtain tens of thousands of francs. This is Abraham Zilberschein, the representative of World Jewish Congress of Relico, who supervised, I believe, the biggest part of the operation. So his correspondence with Rokitsky is the biggest proof of, or the biggest proof how it worked. Well, we are trying to commemorate all of them, unless it's not always easy. This is the 75th anniversary of the death of Chaim Israel Ice at the Orthodox Cemetery with me here. You can see Consul Blechner, who is part of this story, and also Mr. Dr. Piotr Stevinsky, the director of Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. This is how the pictures smuggled to the Polish legation looked like, or they looked like because these ones were arrested by the Swiss police in May 1943, and I'm afraid these people did not survive. They were smuggled, they were sewn together to the sheet of paper and smuggled like that. A fragment of an Israeli movie, an Israeli TV story about Consul Rokitsky, kind of insanization of how he reenacting of his forging passports. Well, now the question. I believe that we owe it to Paraguay, and this is a moment of glory in the history of their diplomacy, because in 1943, the question was not anymore how to produce passports, because most of these honorary consuls had been already fired after the Swiss police broke the ring, the Paraguayan was reported by his colleague, the honorary consul in Zurich. The problem was how to force or to encourage the Latin American states, namely Paraguay, to acknowledge the passport, to recognize the passport. If they did so, it would mean that many people of the owners would be safe. Because if Paraguay says, yes, these are our citizens, we know them, they are Paraguayans, it changes the whole situation. People were still interned in Bergen-Belsen, in Ditmoning, in Vittel, and in a few other camps. This was the intervention of, not your predecessor, but a person linked to the US, the ambassador, Polish ambassador to the US, Mr. Cichanowski, who raised the issue with the Department of State. And Assistant Secretary Long, I know that this person is quite highly controversial, but in this situation he acted correctly, instructing the US ambassador in Paraguay to intervene. Poland also intervened directly with Paraguay to secure the recognition of the passports. A few days later, on the 3rd of January 1944, the Foreign Minister of Paraguay, Dr. Argani, informed that Paraguay had recognized all the documents for all the duration of the war, which meant rescue for many people, including for your ancestors. This is a Polish intervention with the Latin American countries to once again reaffirm the recognition of the passports. Another big player, big hero, Ambassador Alexander Ładoś, basically commonly recognized the person without whom the whole operation would have never taken place. He protected his diplomats. He also intervened with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, so that the Swiss police finally stopped interfering with the passport issues. This is the original version of the intervention. And this is not, of course, not everything what Ładoś did, being the ambassador, being the Polish envoy to Switzerland. As Consul General, as you have mentioned, exactly this, I would confirm it. This is one of the most powerful moments, the 14th of July 1944, when Ładoś let the Jewish organizations use the Polish cable so that they may directly contact Jews in America. It asks to pressure the American US government to bomb the trucks leading to Auschwitz. This is something we have found recently when we tried to learn more about passports. Another cable between Polish ambassador in Washington, Jan Zielonowski, and civil instructors. Exactly the same. These cables all came from Berlin. And finally, something which I left in Polish because it's still, I'm not sure about, these negotiations where the Swiss, Walhalla Jewish Rescue Committee and the Swiss negotiated with Heinrich Himmler the liberation of 300,000 people for a gigantic tribe of 20 million. It also went to the legation of Poland in Bern, thanks to my predecessor. Ambassador Ładoś is widely recognized by the Jewish writers, a few Jewish writers who know the subject, because the subject is largely unknown. Recherche wrote about him. Without his help, hardly a their soul would have been rescued. And we have found two thank you letters written after the war by the Jewish organization, by Aguda Israel, to Dr. Lux. Dr. Lux was heading the, Committee on Rescuing the Jewish Population in Poland. Manfred Lux was Jew himself, and later on presided the International Court of Justice in 1973-75. As a young man, he headed this committee, and actually this thank you letter mentions 4 Polish diplomats. This is exactly people we identify as main players in the whole rescue operation. It's Ambassador Ładoś, it's his deputy Stefan Bruniewicz, who intervened with the Swiss police and threatened them. I mean, all of them threatened the Swiss. If you stop, unless you stop harassing us, we'll make a scandal, a big fuss around it. So it means a lot. The reputation means a lot to the Swiss. Consul Rokicki, who fabricated the passport, and of course, passports, and of course, Dr. Julius Fiel. Here another letter from the Union of Orthodox Rabbis of the United States, which attributes rescue to Dr. Krug, rescuing thousands of people. Now, the question of numbers, because numbers matter. The commemoration plaque in front of the embassy. Numbers matter. What we are doing right now, what we've been doing for a while, is trying to create a whole wish list. I mean, the list of people who were in possession of Latin American passports during the Holocaust. Till now, we have 3,000 names on the list, which means that I believe that we have around half of all people who had Latin American passports. We know their names, we know where they were born, we know when and where they were born. In many cases, I mean in around 50% of cases, we know whether they survived or not. According to this data, at least 620 people, known by names and surnames, who were in possession of Latin American passports, survived the Holocaust. But there are many more, because we don't know all the names, and we don't know the fate of many of the passport owners. So we estimate that around 1,500 people may have survived thanks to this operation. We are not doing it alone as an embassy, because the role of ambassador or the role of a diplomat is not about doing historical researches. Who is taking part in it? Well, first of all, it's Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, a very famous institution dealing with the history of Polish Jews. Secondly, is the Institute of National Memory. Thirdly, it's Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. And the fourth organization, which helps us a lot, is a newly established Pilecki Institute, which deals with modern Polish history. We are also supported by Bad Arolsen International Tracking System and by Bergen-Belsen Memorial Museum. There's a lot of local microhistorians, like Jeffrey and Heidi, but also people from Israel, from Holland, from Poland, and from Germany who support us. So every name is being double-checked. We don't want to make any mistakes, or to, first of all, to list a victim as a survivor and vice versa. This list will be published in, I believe, April or May, in August. And I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I knew about this story, but not in such detail, and I think we've learned a lot tonight. I think it's a huge story. It's a breakthrough story, and I hope will make news in the United States, around the world. Very unique. And this is not about diplomats saving Jews. It's not about beating our chests. This is about Jewish stories and their compatriots who were trying to help their own people. And I was 2 years ago. I was at the Holocaust Memorial in New York City, and I think it was Mr. Mordecai called Yale from Yad Vashem, who was talking about stories that are not being told about Jews helping Jews. I think this is a story that's oftentimes untold. I think it's part of it. Well, thank you again. I don't know, shall we take some questions, I think, to the...
One note, Council General.
Yeah.
It's not just about Jews saving Jews, about Polish diplomats saving Polish Jews. What's remarkable about this story is Polish diplomats saving Jews throughout German-occupied Europe, not just Polish citizens.
May I just add one word, because there is a story to tell. The Silberstein papers, the yellow papers, which you call Silberstein diary, right, contain, well, basically there are people marked, names, surnames, to whom the passports were forged. And one of them was very particular. His name was Czesław Pankowski. It somehow sounded familiar to me. Because the Czesław Pankowski was actually saved thanks to an effort of Marcus Blechner's father, Jacob Blechner, who, together with a Swiss colleague of him, paid 750 francs to have a passport issued for this person. But the problem is that Czesław Pankowski was not a Jew. He was a Pole. He was a Pole married to a Jewess. And he went into hiding with his family and his children. It is, when you say about, when we speak about Poles rescuing Jews, here we have a situation of a Jew rescuing a Pole. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thorough presentations, Ambassador, Jeff and Heidi. Thank you very much. This more or less concludes the official part of our today's presentation, but you're most welcome to, as Consul General mentioned, you're most welcome to ask questions if you're ready to do that right now. We can make that available. If anybody is interested in asking questions, you're most welcome. Oh, yes? Please introduce yourself and ask a question.
My name is Hannah Pfeffer, and I'm the president of the Fraternal Order of Bernese Sosnovitzer, and Jeffrey is our vice president. Thank you so much for this wonderful research and this fascinating story. One question, were there any other Latin American countries that participated in this other than Paraguay?
Yes, thank you for this question. Yes, there were 3 other countries doing that, but they are, Paraguay was the first. Definitely, Paraguay was the first. But when Reniewicz and Rokicki contacted Silberstein and told him to start creating lists of people, why they contacted him? Because at the very beginning the action was chaotic. It means that, if you have a corrupted honorary consul, basically he will always be eager to sell the passport to the one who pays more. There were even cases of paying as much as 4,000, 5,000 francs. So at one moment our predecessor came to Hübli and said, stop it. We want a full control. What we propose is a corporate price, 500, no more. But in order to do it, they had to obtain a massive buyer. And this was Silberstein. Silberstein bought his passports massively, not one by one, tens of passports, hundreds of passports. Now, Silberstein obtained green light to look for other honorary consuls. He found 3 of them. One was the honorary consul of Honduras, the other of Haiti, And the third one was a consul for the Republic of Peru. But the problem with the Peruvian one was that, Peru is a much bigger country than Honduras and Haiti, and it was represented by a full legation. And unfortunately, the person in charge, the consul, committed a mistake and was discovered very quickly, so he did not manage to produce many passports. But Honduran and Haitian passports saved many lives as well. When I say 620 documented survivors, I can be more specific. We know about around 430 Paraguayans, which we believe is half of all Paraguayan survivors, should be 800 around, and around 200, 300 people who survived on having other documents. At the end of the day, when the Bernese group was over, 1943, most of the consuls were fired. Ładoś telegraphed to the government that there was no opportunity to produce passports because there are no producers, there are no providers. Another brave and courageous person appeared. His name was Isaac Sternbuch. Isaac Sternbuch replaced Chaim Eis, who died in 1943. And he had a brilliant idea to try to do it again. This time with the consul of El Salvador in Geneva, with Mr. Castellanos. We don't claim any right to, let's say, we don't call them Polish passports because we did not, I don't know if there is any link between Castellanos and Poland. Of course, he was authorized to do that, but as far as I understand, Castellanos did on his own, also being supported by his Jewish colleague, George Martello. They saved many lives, but this was not us. For the time being, this is what we know. Thank you.
Any more questions, please?
Yes, hello, my name is Ivana Korga and I'm a president of Piłsudski Institute of America here in New York City. And I have a question regarding how the story can be brought to the public. Are there any plans about a book, documentary movie, or maybe Hollywood movie? Thank you.
We should answer the question about Hollywood.
No, Hollywood. Well, the story really came to the fore early last year. And I think each of us, of course, Ambassador Kumuk has been doing a lot, and also Army Consul Mark Bleshner. I have spoken about the passports in Toronto at the survivor group of Benjamin Sosnowitz's survivors in Toronto. I've spoken at the Jewish Genealogical Society in Philadelphia. Some other people have asked me to speak. But yes, I think a movie, Hollywood, gets you somewhere. Short documentaries have just been released. Maybe Ambassador Kumuk could talk about those and where we can see them.
Well, sorry, I'm not a film producer. I mean, I wish I was one. Yes, there has been recently a movie published by the Institute of National Memory, and I must say I like it. I believe I speak too much in that movie, so I should speak a little bit less. But yes, it's a good movie, and I'm sure it will be shown here in New York soon. There are at least 2 books being written right now. There is another movie, or even 2 movies, 2 documentaries being made. So this is a story, this is a developing story, and a lot of journalists are discovering new facts, and there's a lot of story. You know, if I'm telling you tonight what we know, I believe it's 5, maybe 10% of what we may know. We were at the very beginning, the only thing, what I wanted to explore, I'm being very sincere, I prefer being sincere than trying to be diplomatic. What I was afraid was that we would discover one day that our diplomats took money too. But no, they all died in poverty, and Consul Rokitsky already in 1946 was declared by the Swiss police that he's too poor to be permitted to live in Switzerland. And he died in extreme poverty, and even his grave didn't exist. We discovered a place where he was buried only last year. The same happened to Ambassador Wallace. And finally, I'm proud about my predecessor that, you know, being close to such a huge corruption operation, he acted in the name of humanity for purely humanitarian reasons. And I know also that many Jewish people paid the debt to him, because when he himself lived in poverty in France in the 50s, it was Steinbuch family who bought him a little hut when he could easily live.
Any more questions? Yes?
Hello, my name is Rabbi Yaakov Black. I'm Chief Rabbi of Ukraine. But you know, we met, and I'm sitting here in awe and shock because I'm a member of Agudath Israel. I'm a vice president of the World Jewish Congress. I'm representing Amud Eish Memorial Museum, which is here in New York, Brooklyn, which has the archives of the Vada Hatzalah, right? And we are looking. It's fascinating that 75 years after this took place, we're all sitting here today and finding out about pieces of our history that are really, really so important to every single Jew, that and every Jew has survivors or victims that went or people that survived. So I just want to strengthen the previous question. This is a story that not only has to be told, it has to be studied. This is part of the history, and our history is not complete when we speak of the Holocaust and we speak of what went on if we don't pay tribute to the individuals. And by the way, I'm a very good friend. I texted to Julius Kuhl's grandson, who was Israel Singer, you know about it, right? So I showed him pictures, and I asked him why he's not here. So this is a Israel Singer was the Secretary General of the World Jewish Congress later, married to a granddaughter of Julius Kuhl, right? So this is, you know, how what comes around goes around and how this world is all together. But I think that it's up to every single one of us here that has the possibility. You know, I say in New York, they say, see something, say something. And I say, when you hear something, do something. And I think that when we hear something, to do something about it. So I definitely will do whatever I can. And, you know, I'm in touch with the Consul General over here. We met and we spoke about getting an also email while I'm here to the representative of Agudath Israel, why they're not here. They say, Agudath Israel is being mentioned again and again, and why are you not here? But I guess they expect me to represent them as well, without me. So, but I think that it's very, very important to get this message out, to get it into other museums, this, you know, whatever exhibit is possible, and to get the story told, because this is our story, and our story is not complete without all of this. So really, this has been a fascinating evening for me on my way from Brooklyn, just stopping off home to Monsey. I work in Ukraine. So, so this is a very, very fascinating evening, and thank you so much. And that was a question that was taken over the period at the end.
Let me just say that there is another third link between you and this story, because you mentioned that you're a member of Agudath Israel and the World Jewish Congress, but you're also Chief Rabbi of Ukraine. We are speaking about 6 people who were the core of this operation, with hundreds of courageous Jewish and non-Jewish people who financed it, passport by passport. But these 6 people, 3 Poles, well, if we speak in terms of ethnicity, 3 Polish Jews and 3 non-Jewish Poles. Let's call it like that. 3 of them came from what is today Ukraine. Wadosh, born in Lvov, Lviv. Zilberstein, also Lviv. Bernese, Ternopil. Or actually they came from the Polish-Ukrainian borders. Juliusz Kuhl and Chaimais were also born close to the borders. Some it's all what we call Galicia, or what we call Małopolska, the same region.
The stories are still coming out, as you're saying. I'm still trying to find the trail from my grandfather giving a friend money, and who is Egbert de Jong, who was the Rights Minister for Non-Ferrous Metals in the Netherlands, and then somehow the money got to Basel, Switzerland, and I'm trying to trace it all the way to Bern, and then how the passport got back. I'm trying to get I want to know every hand that was in and who was involved, because each passport had 10 people in the chain to get back and forth.
Most of them.
Yeah.
to be clear for Benjamin, I just wanted to say, people will say, well, what, you got the passport, you're the Benjamin ghetto, what did you do? And the answer was simply you showed the passport to the German authorities, to the SS or the German police, whatever they were there, and they arrested you. And they arrested you not because you're a Jew, not because you were born in Poland, but you had a passport of a foreign country, Paraguay, which they viewed as their enemy, and they could then send you, as we now know, Jews from Benjamin were sent to a POW camp in Germany called Tittmoning, and others were sent to Vidal, France, and they were used then, or they were hoping to be used, the Germans, to exchange them for POWs, German POWs, in France or under the Allied control. So that's what was happening. You were actually physically taken out of the ghetto.
Okay, we got one more question. Please introduce yourself and ask it.
My name is Bilal Siv. I'm the Israeli Consul for Cultural Affairs, and I would like to use the opportunity to thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, Consul General, distinguished guests, all of you. No one can never exaggerate on the importance of this event. I'm honored to participate. I will correct the rabbi. I'm here to participate in the name of the government of Israel, and I represent the government of Israel. I'm proud to be here, and I'm here, and on my head, there's two hats. First of all, as representative of the government of Israel and the Israeli consulate and embassy. And second, I'm a son of survivor, Polish father, Polish mother, which survived exactly by this story. And they survived, they arrived to Israel before the Holocaust, and I'm a survivor of family that just been lucky enough, and due to exactly this story, had the chance to speak in their name also. So again, thank you very much for this event, which is incredibly important. Continue to do that, and our end is also, we will continue to participate in commemorating the memory of the survival and the other one who lost their life in the horrible Holocaust. Thank you very much.
Let me just thank you very much for these words, and maybe I should have mentioned it. Now it's a good opportunity that the Embassy of the State of Israel in Bern cooperates with us, and they're really very helpful, and also the Jewish community. Basically, we have a lot of support from the Jewish community. I mean, without this support, we would not be able to do anything like that. Finally, I must say that people in Poland also ask me about the Israeli media. What the Israeli media write about it? I said they are very, very correct. I mean, it has been covered by most of national media in Israel, from the left to the right. Haaretz, Israel Hayom, wrote big stories about it. The same applies to the television. They dedicated 13 minutes to the story of Konstantin Brokitsky. So there is a big support, and this is a story we can build on. It's a positive story. It's a Polish Jewish story. It's a story about Jews who rescued Jews. It's a story about Poles who rescued Jews, and even a story about the Jew who rescued the Poles. So something. I mean, it's which may be really a big stone to build on. Thank you.
If I may conclude, thank you very much, Ambassador, Heidi, Jeff, for this. Before we break off for a little reception, I wanted to answer the question of how we, maybe in New York, how our office is trying to spread the word about all this, apart from doing events like this. It's not just the consulate, but also the Polish-American community in my district. There is an effort underway by the Polish-American Congress of Western New York. We have some representatives of the Polish-American Congress with us this evening, to popularize an effort that happened in the 1980s where a group of Polish Americans, together with the American educators in the state of New York, issued guidelines to the Board of Regents of Education in the state of New York on genocide and Holocaust education, which included certain elements, not this particular one, but certain elements of the Polish witness, Poland's witnessing, and Poland being a messenger of what was happening to the Jews in the Second World War. Right now, the Polish American Congress of Western New York is undertaking this campaign to, in a sense, renew this effort. I have actually those guidelines. They've been adopted, but they've never been implemented. I think there is this particular story should be included in the revised guidelines. And I was just on the phone with those people from West New York who called up, they couldn't come here. And maybe at some point I will ask your support, rabbis, everybody else's, to get the Senate of the state of New York to reapprove those guidelines, including that marvelous story of Konstantin Rokicki and the efforts of politicalness from Bern Group in those revised guidelines. So the Board of Regents can then, so that the children in the state of New York can learn a little bit more about what kind of witness and what kind of heroism certain good people were willing to manifest to save our common humanity. So thank you again, and I'll invite everyone to join us for the reception. Thanks.
Thank you once again, and I would like to also invite you to ask questions directly to our guests. You're most welcome to ask them. And on your way to our small reception, I would like you to tour the exhibition titled "Never Let Down the Trust Polish Diplomats Take During the Holocaust," which also includes the topics we mentioned tonight.